Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Loretta Ellsworth, and I'm a board member of the Minnesota Association of Library Friends and chair of the programming committee. You'll see a little bit more of me towards the end of our program this afternoon, as I have the honor of moderating the Q&A session with today's speaker. Please drop your questions for our speaker in the chat whenever they occur to you. Sheila will keep one eye on the chat throughout her talk and may address a few of these in passing. We'll also devote the end of the program to audience Q&A. Please use the hand raise function if you have a tech-related question or issue. Our tech manager, David, will be mindful of raised hands and be in touch with you individually. Now let's bring in today's guest. If you follow Friends of the Library news at the state level, Sheila DeChantel is likely a name familiar to you. She's the president of and a key driving force behind the Friends of the Brainerd Public Library. In her day job, Sheila is a seasoned event management and promotion specialist. That skill set served her well when bringing to life Wine and Words, now one of the Upper Midwest preeminent author galas hosted by Friends of the Library. Wine and Words is so popular that this year's lineup, featuring best-selling authors like Adriana Trigiani, Nicholas Butler, Lori Frankel, will stick around for not just one event, but 2 dinners and a brunch seating. Let's be clear though, Sheila and her colleagues at the Friends of the Brainerd Library are no one-trick ponies. Over the past 7 years, their innovative fundraisers have been in contention for MALF's annual Evie Nordley Award for Best Project no fewer than 5 times. Standouts include Books and Burgers and Brews, started in October 2016 and going strong to this day. This unique book club, held in Crow Wing County restaurants and pubs, features custom menu items specially crafted around that month's featured title. More recently, when COVID-19 forced the closure of Minnesota's libraries, Sheila's teams at the Friends were among the first to fill the resulting void with virtual story times. Hungry for content, families tuned in to the tune of 200 to 1,200 hits per episode during those early days of the pandemic. In recognition of her long and energetic work on behalf of libraries, Sheila was named Brainerd's Outstanding Citizen of the Year in 2020. We're sure she's proud of that honor, but if you ask her, this lifelong lover of and advocate for books will tell you that no honor holds a candle to the Bookworm Award she received back in 3rd grade. Take it away, Sheila.
I need to unmute. Hey everyone, thank you for coming in today. I'm Sheila DeChantel. Thank you for that nice introduction, Loretta. Originally when we planned this, we were planning myself and Laurel Hall, who is our director of the Brainerd Public Library. Unfortunately, Laurel's been really sick for over a week. She had a recent trip to India and came back with a little bit of food poisoning, and she's really been struggling. So unfortunately, we're hoping she gets well soon, but she is still not doing well and spent a week in the hospital. So miss her here today. I am not techie at all. So thank goodness for David and the team that's going to be helping behind the scenes. But to start with, I hope you guys brought pen and paper or something to write on, because I think there's a good chance that something I mentioned here today might be a book that you're going to want to look up and remember that later. I know that David's also going to make sure that the links to this PowerPoint as well as the webinar will be available later on the Minnesota Association of Library Friends website, so you'll be able to access it, share it, or review. And yeah, so I'm really excited to do this with you. I am going to require my glasses, of course, but really I'm not by any means like a banned book expert or anything. I'm just about 14 years ago started to discover some of the books that have been banned, and it just kind of surprised me, a lot of the titles, and I think you guys might be surprised too. And so then I just kind of started diving into it, took a real interest in it. And as time went on, wound up speaking on it locally. I haven't done it for a few years, so I'm going to be a little out of practice, and it's kind of interesting to see what's hitting now. But as we said for this webinar, we're going to be talking about, you know, banned books, where it started about 20 years ago when ALA, the American Library Association, started to actually keep track of the books that were being challenged and banned. So we'll talk about that a little bit, look at the history, and then as well as what's happening currently. So let's see. Let's see. I would love you guys, if you do have pen and paper, while we're kind of going through this on the early side, just quickly jot down 5 books that really touched you, or 3, or whatever it is that really spoke to you through the years. I mean, just quickly jot those down on paper. I know for myself, just going through some of the books that I have loved in the past, I was really surprised to see them show up. So I think that might be something that if you're unaware what's on the banned book list, you're about to find out. And yeah, there's a good chance that we're going to hit one of your books that you wrote down, and I kind of hope we do. So if you're here today, you're more than likely here for a number of reasons. One, you might be part of the library system and kind of looking for some collaboration in a time that obviously book banning and challenging of books has just become explosive in just the last couple of years, kind of with a lot of things since COVID. People are just really got strong opinions on things, and it kind of, I think my message always is that I personally don't like coconut, but that doesn't mean you can't like coconut. So we're going to really review some of that. You might be maybe a friend of the library or somehow associated with Minnesota Association of Library Friends, and you're just curious about what you can do in your areas of how to support our libraries and just become more knowledgeable. Or maybe you're just, you know, someone in our community that really does want to know more about what is happening in our world with challenges and banned books. So that's what I'm hoping to do today. I'm going to pull up my screen here, and I'm going to check the chat really quick. Looks like we're good there. The gold star that I was speaking about will be representing the books that we're going to be giving away at the end. So as we talk about some of these books, you're going to see this symbol. That'll be one of the books they're giving away. So getting us back on track here, what is a challenge? So a book challenge is when somebody attempts to remove or restrict materials on the service-based or content. So that's probably what happens the most. And a challenge would be like when a parent or someone is concerned about a book that is in our library or that is in our school, and they address that. So that is when a book is challenged. When it is a ban, that is when that challenge actually escalates to the actual removal of materials or cancellation of services based on that content. Okay. So why does someone challenge a book? Kind of talk to us a little bit. A lot of times it's to protect others, typically children, from what is perceived to be a difficult information and or ideas. Here's a great slide of who initiates the challenge. It's really interesting to see that about 50% of challenges come from parents, 20% is patrons, 11% would be like a school board or administration, 9% comes from political or religious groups, 5% is libraries or teachers concerned about something, 4% elected officials. And if you can see that little tiny 1 there, students themselves are about 1%. And here's a great slide for reasons for challenge. What we're going to kind of go through today is you're going to see that this has really changed a lot, especially in more recent years. You're going to see a lot of the topics we talk about on the front end are not the hot topics of today. And as you're going to see here, this is from 2019. So if you're familiar with this kind of format, the larger the letters, the more that's been challenged. So the smaller ones are still being challenged, but not as big an issue. And then as you get into the bigger ones like LGBTQIA, sexually explicit, political viewpoint, those are some of the major hot topics that have kind of been on the forefront the last few years. we're going to go in, just checking messages really quick, nothing. We're going to go through the history of banned books and kind of start out back in those early years. Sometimes my little forward thing works and sometimes it does not. There we go. Okay, so when I was doing some research these last couple weeks, looking back as far as I could, this was the earliest book that I could find. In 1650, this book sparked outrage in the New England colonies. It was a pamphlet refuted Puritan doctrine, and the Massachusetts Bay Colony condemned the book and had it publicly burned at the Boston marketplace. So crazy to think that books all the way back to the mid 1600s, there was actually a book burning. It is considered to be the first book to be banned and burned in the United States. And then shortly thereafter, the author was banished back to England. The Bible is obviously probably the book that you might think of. Burned, beloved is more widely read and more frequently attacked than any other book in history. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to you at all. In fact, it is currently in the top 10. I believe it's number 6 on the banned book list of people having opinions about what is in the Bible. Kind of a fun one. The dictionary has actually been banned. Starting in 1976, the American Heritage Dictionary was removed from school libraries in Anchorage, Alaska and Cedar Lake, India, because of its objective language. It was removed the following year from school libraries in Eldon, Missouri for the same reason. So that's a little humorous way to look at that. And I'm hoping that's kind of what today does for you as well, that you kind of find a nice mix of books that might surprise you, books that is kind of a funny reason that they have showed up on the list. Some are clearly going to be shocking, sad, and I suspect some might even make you angry. I thought I'd start off some of the kids' books that are kind of surprising, that yes, kids' books actually do show up on banned book lists. So here we're going to start off with Harriet the Spy. If you're familiar with this kind of middle grade style book, Harriet likes to go around and take notes on her neighbors and friends and just kind of, puts together little mysteries. Real fun read, great book, has actually been charged with the following offenses, if you can see that to the right, for setting a bad example for children, spying, and tomboyish behavior. So obviously a book like this would kind of fall into that, kind of funny that parents were actually concerned about this style of book. Two others that I'm sure you've probably heard, James and the Giant Peach definitely had a lot of controversy there for a while. Some of the things in the book was it was too scary for its targeted age group. Where the Wild Things Are is considered to be traumatizing to young children. The Giving Tree is interpreted as being sexist because it is a female tree in the book and it's a young boy, and they just feel it represents that the woman is always giving and giving and giving. The Lorax is one of my funny favorites. I thought that was always interesting, that it's actually been challenged and banned due to the fact that it shines poorly on the logging industry. I love that. Amy says, Harriet the Spy? Oh man. Absolutely. Yeah, some of our favorites. Trying to get my screen to forward again. Charlotte's Web is another really interesting book, I think, to be considered. Charlotte's Web is obviously a favorite. You've got Wilbur the talking pig. It's a great story, and actually because of the animals being talking, as is Animal Farm, and pretty much any book, including Narnia, that includes any form of talking animal is considered sacrilegious. You can see on the poster, it says considered dangerous, do not read. Another one that's one of my favorites is actually, they do take a little issue with the book itself, but it's actually the cover of one of the editions of Little Red Riding Hood, where it appears that she has a bottle of wine in her basket. And so that created some controversy with parents thinking that it is showing that it's okay for young children to be around alcohol. And I think that's terrific. Captain Underpants, The Adventures of Captain Underpants, kind of a more current, younger age read. Captain Underpants has been charged with the following offenses: creating havoc, potty mouth humor, and playing pranks at school. Parents find that this teaches their children to kind of follow suit on this. So that one has also been challenged.
No guns, and no more violence than a children's superhero cartoon. The best answer I could give. Hi, I'm Dave Pilkey, the creator of Captain Underpants.
Yes.
You might have heard that Captain Underpants was the #1 most complained about book in America in 2012 and 2013. I have to admit, the news was quite a shock to me. I wondered, how could people be so offended by a series that contains no profanity, no sex, no nudity, no drugs, no smoking, no alcohol, no guns, and no more violence than a children's superhero cartoon? The best answer I could give you is this: everybody doesn't always like the same things. A lot of people like Captain Underpants, and some people don't. Fortunately, as Americans, we live in a country where we don't all have to like the same things. The freedom to choose for ourselves what we read and think about is a hard-won right for every American. So what should you do if you find yourself offended by a book? How can you show your concern without undermining the freedoms of everyone around you? It's easy. All you have to do is make a simple change. The next time you find yourself thinking,
I don't want children to read this book,
just make a simple change. One tiny adjective can make all the difference. The next time you start to think,
that book does not belong in the library,
just make a simple change. And if you ever find yourself thinking,
I should complain about that book,
just make a simple change. You see, by changing ourselves, we can show our concern while still allowing everyone else to experience the freedoms they deserve. So make a simple change and make the world a better place.
I think that really covers really where it's at. Ban books, challenge books by any means doesn't mean that you have to agree with every book that you see, or like every book that's out there, or want to read it, or even feel it's right for you. But I think it's what we're trying to show you here today is that it really is everybody's right to read. It is, part of our Constitution. It is, you just want to have the option to read what fits for you. And I think it's what our libraries try to do, is try to get a large, diverse books in our libraries. And again, we're just kind of in that little children's section. Let's stop this. Okay. Lorax. Going back to Lorax a little bit, I kind of like this. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Dr. Seuss has quite a few books that have been on the banned book list. Judy Blume is our first book with the gold star. We'll be giving away a copy of this at the end. One of my favorite books growing up was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. In fact, Judy Blume, I just loved all of her books, couldn't get enough of it. And she is one of our authors that just gets hit time and again If you're familiar with the story about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. It's about a young girl kind of growing up to the point where she's getting her menstrual cycle. And at the time, this was just, you know, such a taboo subject to be presenting to children. But it's a great way for kids to really connect with books. And it's, as the last video just said too, it's also a wonderful way for parents to have a way to connect with their children while they're going through this. As I mentioned, we got Judy Blume just kind of gets on the hit list there. She has 5 books that are on the list of the 100 most frequently challenged books between 1990 and 1999. Her book Forever, it takes number 7, Blubber, number 30, Deanie, 42, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, number 60, and Tiger Eyes, which is a kind of a young adult read, and that one is at 89. So banned books aren't just saving readers, sometimes they even save their authors. There's no doubt that Judy Blume, author of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Deanie, and Superfudge, have offered generations of readers guidance, companionship, and hope, despite being one of the most challenged authors of the 21st century. I mean, who would have thought Judy Blume? Authors and songwriter Amanda Palmer actually wrote a song for Blume that included the lines, "You told me things that nobody around me would tell. I don't remember my friends from gymnastics class, but I remember when Deanie was at school. Margaret bored counting hats in the synagogue. All of them lived in my head, quietly whispering, 'You are not so strange.'" And I really love that. I mean, I think for us as readers, we all have that story of that book that has just touched us and just kind of stuck with us, where you really, as you grew up through different ages of your life, you really wanted these characters to be your friends. You wanted to hang out with Deanie. You wanted to hang out with Margaret. And they just become characters that we love. Kind of an interesting one, and probably one that should make you a little sad, is that Rosa Parks was actually challenged and banned from a Pennsylvania school district. The author, I kind of like this little quote that I found, said, "I am Rosa Parks, calls out the PA school district for banning a book. You are on the wrong side." So Brad Meltzer is the author of this book, and it was placed on the ban list by the Central York School District in Pennsylvania. And there was also a clip on Fox and Friends. Meltzer called out the school board for becoming part of cancel culture. The ban, which impacts books that address race, social justice, and history, was implemented in October of 2020, believe it or not. And according to the school district, they were not banned, but just frozen until they could be vetted. So they put several books in this frozen mode while they just didn't feel that it was the correct books for our kids to be reading. And Tango Make 3 also kind of hits some more recent years on the top challenge book of 2017. If you're familiar with the story, it is about 2 penguins, same-sex penguins, that fall in love, and they actually have a 3rd little penguin with them. It is challenged and labeled because it features a same-sex relationship. You can see this particular book has won awards. It's definitely a book that I would recommend checking out. It's a fantastic book. So there's my little slide that I was looking for earlier. So Ban This Book is just a fun little middle grade read. This one also, you can see that star kind of behind it. We are going to give away this book as well at the end. It's a stirring defense against censorship that's perfect for middle grade readers. It lets kids know that they can make a difference in their schools, communities, and lives. Readers, librarians, and all those books that have drawn a challenge have a brand new hero. Stand up and cheer, book lovers. This one's for you. So it's just a really fun read, and I'm kind of excited about this book myself. I have not read it, but I recently just found out about it, and definitely think this is a great read. Probably familiar with this challenge. Moss has been challenged over and over again. Kind of shows up in the graphic novels in your teen section of your libraries and your schools, and kind of has a lot of history to it here. on, as you can see in the little cartoon there, he says, shocking, exposing middle grade students to historic recipes. School boards must ban and censor this material. And then she says, but wait, if you censor history, that history has a way of transforming the past into current affairs, which we'll talk a little bit about more later. Getting into kind of as we're getting out of the children's books and talking a little bit more, kind of getting into that middle grade. You're probably familiar with John Green. If you're not, I certainly hope you are. The Fault in Our Stars is an incredible young adult book about a girl who's dying with cancer. And it's a great story. I think it was my first, somebody told me once that whatever your first John Green book is going to be your favorite John Green book. And I've actually loved everything he has written. The Fault in Our Stars was the first book I read. So for me, it stood true. That is my favorite of his books, but it's an incredible read. And then as you can see here, the ban came as a complaint from a parent from the book containing profanity and reference to sex. Green, the author, responded to this ban on his Tumblr page after a fan asked for his reaction. He says, I guess I am both happy and sad, he writes. I'm happy because apparently young people in Riverside, California will never witness or experience mortality since they won't be reading my book, which is great for them. So kind of did a little diving into John Green here and kind of the things that he talked about. He did have a video clip on YouTube, but he does get a little heated. So I did not link it. He gets a little ornery about the fact that his books get challenged time and again. But if you definitely read this book, you'll see the little star here. This is going to be one of our giveaways as well. And it's also a great movie. If you haven't seen the movie, they're both really fantastic. Little message in the chat here. Lois Burns says, my 8-year-old grandson dressed as Captain Underpants for Halloween last year. That is awesome. And Janine Grahams said that one shocks me. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. Okay. Fun fact about John Green's The Fault in Our Stars, after it hitting the banned book, the community really kind of went against it, and the ban was short-lived. And so that particular ban was taken off. And this was a picture of people just excited to see the book off that list. As you can see, it's a great book for young adults. Definitely a hard read, but I think an important read. As long as we're picking on John Green here a little bit, coming up recently, I think it's a Netflix series now. It's got Hulu right there. It's on Hulu. John Green's book, Looking for Alaska, had been named the most challenged book of 2015. In a survey by an American Library Association, most complaints were offensive language and sexually explicit descriptions. Little picture of our author here, John Green. I kind of loved this quote that I found by him. It said, I don't believe that books, even bad books, corrupt us. Instead, I believe books challenge and interrogate. They give us windows into the lives of others and give us mirrors so that we can better see ourselves. And ultimately, if you have a worldwide view that can be undone by a novel, let me submit that the problem is not the novel. Probably got a good point there. I just kind of started a little list. Obviously this list, with given a ton of time, I could make this where you probably couldn't even read it. But some of our authors, just to kind of pop up, because obviously you could really rabbit hole on this subject and just dig deep. Highly recommend that you guys even do your own research by looking up some of your favorite authors in your books. Just when you're using Google, put the word banned behind it and you might be surprised. Here's just some kind of some that we've been talking about today and some that we haven't yet. Susan Collins is the author of the Hunger Games series. Sherman Alexie, we'll talk more about him. He's coming up on the current top banned list. Judy Blume, we talked about. We'll talk about Steinbeck as well. Thank you. Amy Johnson said, I love that quote. And I really do too. I really do too. So you probably knew it was coming, or you probably are aware. Harry Potter, every single one of them has been challenged and banned. Witchcraft, kind of going back to the Captain Underpants, witchcraft, kids behaving badly in school, all the things. And I have to tell you, this one particularly hits home for me because this is where my two sons really fell in love with books. The Harry Potter series really brought my boys 2 years apart. When they were in that middle grade, it actually made me fall in love with the books too, because when they started getting into Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, getting into the Chamber of Secrets, I started wondering what they were reading when you started hearing kind of a little pushback on it. And honestly, Philip, this is probably my first dive into what a banned and challenged book was. I was really, when I started reading them just to see what my kids were reading, I too fell in love with these. It's probably one of my favorite series. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I don't know if you can see it behind my screen, but that whole top shelf over my head, that's all Harry Potter, in 2 languages and audiobook. So huge fan of Harry Potter. Kind of a fun story, that last book when the Deathly Hallows came out, we had it the day of. We were those people that waited in line at midnight at Walmart to get those copies. And my boys had school, but I was able to start reading right away. And I remember being ahead of my younger son, Justin, in reading, but I wanted to share the story so much with somebody, but I couldn't say anything. So we had 3 copies of the book, and I took his copy and I actually put Post-it notes in his copy on those pages where I would be like, oh my gosh, could you believe that just happened? So when he's reading the book and he got to that point where he turns a page and he sees a Post-it note from me, he just kind of looked at me and said, Mom, did you do this through my entire book? And I had. Yep. So just kind of a fun story. And we really connected through these books. It really, I can't even say what this series means to me and what it meant to my kids, and how it still ties into our life today, where it's just all really big fans of Harry Potter. So like I said, all of them, boom, banned and challenged. J.K. Rowling definitely challenged on this. And then this little clip, which is something that my kids could say. Some people wanted to ban the Harry Potter books, but I learned to love reading because of Harry. And I think that story I just shared is something that those of you with kids, or maybe even for yourself, can relate, that there is a book that really made you just want more, and to find more books like that. And you really just kind of found the ones that spoke to you. And it's just crazy to think that people challenge these books and want them unavailable to be read. Continuing on with some more authors that get hit hard, Laurie Halse Anderson, amazing writer. She had a few books that were challenged. Speak is an amazing, amazing book that I have read, kind of again, middle grade. So in this book, our protagonist, kind of in her early, well, mid-teens, goes to a party, winds up getting into some trouble there. She is raped, and how she doesn't want to speak about it. This book has, it just kind of chokes me up a little bit, because I read an article once on this book being challenged, and on Laurie's website, there were pages and pages and pages of people that had wrote in, young adults who were able to speak and share their story because of this book. You can see it won a National Book Award, got a star by it, because it's one of those books that I just feel is just a powerful story that everybody should take the time to read. Shout is also a book written by this author. Laurie has a few, like I said, Laurie has a few books that have been challenged. And Laurie says that pulling titles that deal with difficult subjects can make it harder for students to discuss issues like racism and sexual assault. A lot of times people find their stories or find connections when you can't share with someone. Maybe you're not ready to share, maybe, but when you can find your story in a book or something that just helps speak to you can make all the difference. Speaking of banned books, Margaret Atwood, if you're familiar with this author, and you probably should be, The Handmaid's Tale is now on TV as well as a series. Definitely Margaret Atwood has definitely had her banned challenges. Handmaid's Tale has been really through the ringer for being challenged. It's just a great story. You're kind of getting a little bit now almost into classics. And one of the fun things that Margaret was doing after being challenged for years, and definitely I highly recommend you look up even more of this online on this story, is that recently Margaret made a book that wouldn't burn.
So let's talk about this new book banning craze.
Some of the nation's most famous and critically acclaimed books have been banned.
We have the banning of books and even a threat to burn some of them.
They're burning books.
Absolutely awful.
This is next level.
So won't that one be really fun to see what that goes? If you've seen that, it did go, I think it was May, right? That it did go to auction. I don't know if anybody knows what that book went for. I'd love to hear that. But that was just kind of talk about authors just kind of taking a proactive stance on, you know what, you're just going to keep challenging my book. I'm going to show you that it is going to withstand the test of time. Again, kind of getting into classics. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain. Just kind of one of those books that some of us grew up on or definitely heard the stories. As you can see here to the right, charged with the following offense of use of regional dialect and bad grammar, socially inappropriate language, and irreverent behavior. So you may have heard Mark Twain's classic novel was actually being rewritten to take out some of the words that were offensive terms, such as nigger was to be expunged, and also some of the language that he uses where he doesn't speak real clearly in the book. I think the argument here, obviously, is that we can't change our history. So while we all know this is an offensive word, we also know that this is the way it was back when Mark Twain was writing this and telling the story. That is the story. Taking the word out of the book doesn't change the story, and we cannot rewrite history, although sometimes it seems like some of us try. This little fun little graphic there for Mark Twain. Just kind of in the chat here. Oh, thank you, David. $130,000 at auction, and there's a link in the chat. Well, oh, wow. Yep. Amy Johnson had said that while I think no book should be banned, I'm not surprised that The Handmaid's Tale made this list. Agreed. Another one of my favorites. Oh, look at there, I double starred it. I love Fahrenheit 451. I think it's kind of a humorous because this is actually, if you're familiar with Fahrenheit 451, and I hope you are, it is a classic, and it's very dystopian about a time when books are actually illegal. And if you are found with books, there are firemen in this book that they go around and they actually burn the books. If you're found with them, you can go to prison, you get in so much trouble. which is kind of funny that, it's really a banned book about banned books. And like Ray Bradbury says, there's more than one way to burn a book, and the world is full of people running around with lit matches. Boy, is that true. So kind of a little fun story here. With my personal book club, we read a classic every year. And this is a couple years ago. We actually read Fahrenheit 451. My group really likes to get into the story. One thing fun about classics is you really can get into them. So Brenda, who hosted that night, bought Firehouse subs, which is our local sub, because that's kind of funny. And then she actually made this book with a little tea light inside it. I actually have that here at the house now, where she burned. I don't know which book this is, so I don't condone book burning, but this is pretty cool. And then what she did here, if you can see in that top right, those are brownies, and she melted Jolly Rancher fire, and kind of when they were melted, kind of strung it out to look like fire. Just really cool. You can see the pretzels look like matches. And then of course we had to have a little fireman's hat as well. So kind of some of the questions that we get into that in a little bit here is, like, what can we do to kind of make others aware or be more aware ourselves about some of these books that are on the banned and challenge list? And this is really a fun way to do it with your book clubs and with the groups. Just read it as a group and really discuss it. I mean, what a great way to kind of dive into what put this on the list in the first place. So this poster was also hanging, books inspired dangerous thoughts for your protection. Give your books to your local firemen for safe disposal. And then there's a picture of me at that book club. I rubbed some dirt on my face and I kind of like to get into the role. Continuing with our classics, the color purple is also on the list. Many different reasons for the book being banned, including religious objections, homosexuality, violence, African history, rape, incest, drug abuse, explicit language, and sexual scenes. Eventually, these challenges were overruled. Color Purple, another beautiful book. To Kill a Mockingbird, most challenged book of 2020, number 7 for racial slurs, perception of the Black experience. Another beautiful, beautiful book. A couple things on that. School board outside Seattle voted to stop requiring students to read an iconic novel about racism and injustice. And then May 16th, 2022, this book was removed from McMinn County schools over 8 curse words and nudity, while the school board deemed unnecessary. A school board decision to remove To Kill a Mockingbird from 8th grade curriculum in Mississippi is the latest in a long line of attempts to ban the Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Harper Lee since its publication in 1960. The novel about a white lawyer's defense of a Black man against a false rape charge by a white woman has become one of the most frequently challenged books in the US. Another one that may surprise you, or it's kind of the one that makes me smad, sad and a little mad, is The Diary of a Young Girl, written by Anne Frank. Poster's kind of funny, however, because it was actually challenged before for being a real downer, and that's actual. Other reasons for it being challenged as well, but that's kind of one of the interesting ones, that it's just kind of a downer. Of Mice and Men is a book that actually had local things happen here at our Brainerd Public Library. This book was challenged in 2014. At the time, I remember I received a phone call where I was working from one of the people that was kind of leading this, and had asked me and said, hey, there's a group of us that are getting ready and we are going to challenge this book at our high school. And apparently he did not really know my connection to the library, was kind of listening and just kind of thinking, I wonder what book he's talking about. And as he went on kind of describing what they were going to do, just kind of felt it was not appropriate for kids. And I just said, what book are you talking about? And when he said Of Mice and Men, my heart literally fell. You can see an article here. This came out of our local paper of Mice and Men. It did not, during the meeting, it did not have anything. The only thing that happened was one of the councils said this is not a book that I would have in my house, which I think we've seen from a previous video is absolutely the correct response. Just because a book may not be for you doesn't mean that nobody can read it. Doesn't mean that it's not for anybody. See, I've got a couple of questions here. Judy says, what would be a short response to give a person who comes into our book sale and makes disparaging words about books we have for sale? And that's a great question, Judy. Judy's actually on the Brainerd Friends board. And, you know, I think just like the library is to bring books to all people. And so are our book sales. What might not be right for somebody might be the perfect book for someone else. When you dig into some of these banned titles, you can really find in cases, especially when we get into some of the more modern books, where these books are being connectors for people, and in some cases even saving lives. If anybody else has any comments on what Judy said to that, feel free to put that in the comments as well. It is sad that happens, but I know it does. And then Wendy asked, do you consider removing a book from required reading in a school to be different from banning from the school library? Do you consider removing a book from required reading in a school to be different from banning it from the school library? I feel it's different because removing it from the required reading in a school, it's still available for people to get, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't make the book unavailable, it just goes off the required reading list. And anyone feel free to respond to that as well. This is actually taken out of our paper as well, and I love what was said here. This was a local parent that said, if we ban what offends someone, we won't have anything left in the curriculum because everyone will inevitably be offended by something. And Judy, maybe that's even a better answer right there. Maybe that becomes a poster at the book sales. Yep. And David kind of responded to that too, saying, yes, curriculum has only a limited amount of space. You can only read assigned so many books in a semester. And then Susan says, one could put an alternative book on the required reading list rather than removing a book from the list. So getting into currents, we kind of went through the past. I mean, some of it's sad, some of it's funny. And kind of like I said at the beginning, in the last couple of years, things have really heated up. I mean, in probably everything, but definitely in book bannings into as well. Recent surge in banned book targets titles with focus on race, sexuality. Some 1,597 books have been challenged or removed from libraries over the past year, according to the latest figures from the American Library Association, the highest number since the organization began keeping track 20 years ago. And that's just outstanding, which really kind of brings us to why we're doing this today, is that you are seeing more of a surge. The titles and the books that are being challenged now and attempted bans definitely are in a higher category. It's kind of interesting to think that even what we considered offensive 20 years ago, some of those books were now, you can kind of look back and go, well, that's kind of funny that we challenged that. Now here we are in a whole new era. So parents, activists, school board officials, and lawmakers around the country are challenging books at a pace not seen in decades. The American Library Association said in a preliminary report that it received an unprecedented 330 reports of book challenge, each of which can include multiple books last fall. And that was in April of this year.
Hi, everybody. This is Jason Reynolds, and I am your honorary chair for this year's Banned Books Week, which is taking place September 26th to October 2nd. I'm very excited about it, and most importantly, I'm excited about this year's theme, which is so simple, yet so powerful. The theme is, books unite us, censorship divides us. It's cut and dry, you know? The concept is baked into the theme. But in case, we need to sort of expound on it a bit more, let me just say this. What does it mean when we say that books unite us? It means that books can be the tethers, that books can connect human beings. It can connect us culturally. It can connect gender to gender. It can connect person to person, socioeconomic statuses and all sorts of other things. These tools, these narratives, these stories are the things that we use to ground us in our humanity, the things that convince us that we're not actually that different, and the things that are actually different about us should be celebrated because they are what makes this tapestry of life. Right? This beautiful patchwork that we all so gratefully are living. What does it mean when we say that censorship divides us? It means that anytime that we eliminate or wall off some of those narratives, then we're not getting a whole picture of the world in which we live, which means we don't actually have a full view of life, which means we then run the risk of becoming harmful, of navigating the world in a way that is closed off, closed-minded, and ultimately, to some extent, can run the risk of becoming poison. It means that we limit our vocabulary, which means that we then sort of complicate the way that we even can communicate with the world, right? Like, to censor a book is to damage the framework in which we live, right? Seems drastic, but it's not. And so I want you all to join us this week for Banned Books Week as we fight against censorship, as we celebrate books that live on the shelves and work to ensure that all books have a space on the shelves and the opportunity to live in the psyches of our children as they grow into the human beings that will inherit this wonderful place. I hope you all join us. For more info, check out bannedbooksweek.org. And again, I'm your honorary chair, which I'm very happy about, and I'll holler at y'all soon. Peace.
That was actually from Banned Book Week last year, 2021. And I really don't think I can say it any better than what he does. It's just very, very well put. So looking more at what has changed since that earlier slide that I showed where it kind of gave some of the top reasons, here's more of the top reasons that are kind of coming up in more recent years. Offensive language, sexual contact, unsuitable to the age group. Definitely violence, homosexuality, religious viewpoints, occult, portrayal of Marxism, it's hard to, a little blurry there, nudity, racism, drugs, alcohol, smoking, and anti-family. So this is our current top 10 list of the books that are on definitely being challenged. I'll go through this fairly quickly, but you can look these up yourself. Genderqueer is in this beautifully illustrated memoir. Kobabe charts a journey of self-discovery from adolescent to adulthood. Along the way, he navigates confusing questions about sexuality and gender identity, then ultimately comes out as gender non-binary. He faces familiar teenage problems like the agony of crushes and dating, along with confusing challenges like menstruating as a non-binary individual. This in 2021 was the most challenged book in the country. See a little author's note there. Queer youth are often forced to look outside their own home and outside the education system to find information on who they are. Removing or restricting queer books in libraries and schools is like cutting a lifeline for queer youth who might not even yet know what terms to ask Google to find out more about their own identity, bodies, and health. Lawn Boy, where is it? I just picked this up myself from our local library here. Lawn Boy is number 2, the big-hearted story of Micah Young Chicano, striven working on a landscaping crew in Washington as Mike fights against the soul-crushing forces of classism and racism to achieve his American dream. He also comes to terms with his sexual identity. Though the novel was written for an adult audience, teens fell in love with Lawn Boy, leading it to be awarded an Alex Prize, an award bestowed by the Young Adult Library Service Associations to books written for adults that resonate with teens. Goes on to say, critics slammed the book for LGBTQ content and sexual explicit material, pointing to a sexual encounter between 2 young men. Our author has received hate mail and death threats as a result of campaigns to ban his book, but he remains uncowed. When I look at the wealth of great literature that enlightened souls that have sought to ban through the years, how could I feel anything but pride to be listed among them? All Boys Aren't Blue is number 3 on the list. It's Johnson's Emerson, an apologetic memoir manifesto, chronicles the joy and challenges of growing up Black and queer. Johnson lays bare the darkest moments of his young life, from the bullying they suffered to the molestation by a family member, which also remembering moments of arresting beauty, from flea marketing with their grandmother to experiencing young love. All Boys Aren't Blue has been targeted for LGBTQ content, profanity, and once again, sexual explicit material. Can go on to read how Johnson says that books with heavy topics are not going to harm children. Children have to exist in a world full of heavy topics and are going to be affected by them whether they read the books or not. Having this book gives them tools, the language, the resources, and the education so that when they are having to deal with a heavy topic, they have a roadmap for how to handle it. So as you're seeing, as we're going through this list, for modern day, the books are having heavier challenges, what we're kind of dealing with now. Number 4, Out of Darkness, is the gripping work of historical fiction set in East Texas oil town during the 1930s, chronicles the teenage romance between Naomi, a Mexican-American girl, and Wash, a Black boy. Racism and classism divided these young lovers until the novel culminates with an all too real disaster, one of the worst in American education history, the 1937 explosion of the New London School, which killed over 300 students and teachers. Out of Darkness has been labeled as sexually explicit and widely challenged by its depicts of abuse. Author wrote, I wrote Out of Darkness for brave, big-hearted readers ready to embrace some painful aspects of our country's history. Number 5, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. In the first 5 years since publication, Thomas's debut novel has become a downright phenomenon. Honored with the prestigious Coretta Scott King Book Award, it captured the imagination of a generation and later became a feature film. The Hate You Give is a searing story of a 16-year-old Star Carter who finds her footing as an activist when her unarmed friend is murdered by a police officer. Critics have slammed the book for profanity, violence, and a supposed anti-police agenda. This book I have read. We actually read this for something we do locally called Books, Burgers, and Brews. And it was an incredible discussion. We had about 40 people from the community come in and talk about this book. We had just some great insight. Highly recommend it. Has a little star by it. We'll be giving away a copy of this book as well. Number 6, I did say we were going to talk about Sherman. Sherman, the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian, has been on the list for a long time and currently is still obviously hanging in there really high at number 6. Awkward teenager Greg Gaines plans to make it through high school by keeping a low profile and making mediocre movies with his best friend Earl. But everything changes when his mother forces him to befriend Rachel, a classmate with leukemia. As Greg makes a move, oops, sorry. It looks like I have the wrong thing here. This is, so sorry. This is my hurry in a power outage. If you're from Brainerd, you were part of maybe the power outage last night, trying to get these last minute things done. This is actually a description from me and Earl, the dying girl, which is coming up. Absolute true diary of a part-time Indian. Gosh, I read this forever ago. But it's kind of a young adult, middle grade read. Definitely has some stuff in it. And I'm so sorry for having the wrong slide there. That's from me and Earl. Maybe I did. I reversed them. There it is. So this is absolute true diary. It's the story of Junior, a teenage cartoonist growing upon the Spokane Indian Reservation. Junior attends schools in a nearby farm town where the only other native student is the school mascot. On the res, Junior is considered a traitor, but he doesn't fit in as his gleaming all-white school either. And then this one is me, and let's see if I can figure out how to reverse. Nope, can't, don't know. So that was a description there. We are giving away of me and Earl and the dying girl, as well as the bluest eye. So the bluest eye is, let's see if I can get this to go back. There it is. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, real quick, was what I was saying earlier. Greg makes a movie about Rachel's life, traces her deteriorating health. He's forced to reconsider the wisdom of living on the sidelines. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is a gutting, unflinching novel. Rachel doesn't get better and Greg doesn't fall for her. Parents slammed the novel as pornographic and degrading for women, but teens fell hard for it. So much that it was adopted to a feature film. Anyone calling it pornographic has no idea what the words means, Andrew, the author, tweets. So number 8 is The Bluest Eye. Probably familiar with Toni Morrison. This book has been around since 1970. It's an amazing book. And as you can see here, Morrison's visionary first novel is a painful and poignant story of Pecola Breedlove, an abused and unloved Black girl pregnant by her own father, who suffers relentless oppression and cruelty in her rural Ohio town. Pecola wishes desperately for blue eyes, convinced that conventional white beauty is a ticket to a better life, but soon finds her mind colonized to the brink of madness. In 1970, The Bluest Eye put Morrison on the map as a once-in-a-century writer of preternatural gifts. In the decades since, it has remained a mainstay on Penn Books list, which states citing for offensive language and sexually explicit material as justification for excluding it from academic curriculum. So, yeah, also a star. We're giving a copy of that book. Number 9, This Book is Gay. Dawson's warm and wise instructional manual for growing up LGBTQ covers a vast range of topics from coming out to flirty to the ins and outs of gay sex. Candid and uncensored, it's an edifying, informative work packed with voices from across the gender and sexual spectrums. Bans and challenges to the book cite its sexually explicit material, as well as its efforts to provide sexual education. Taking This Book is Gay out of school isn't going to stop young people from figuring out their identity, but it will leave them without a valuable resource. And then number 10, Beyond Magenta, Transgender Teen Speaks Out. Hang on a minute. Beautifully written and photographed by Cookland, don't know how to say that. Beyond Magenta profiles 6 transgender and gender neutral teens in their own words. Each profile tells a nuanced personal tale of self-discovery, coming out, and navigating the struggles and triumph that follows. The book gets real about these teens' challenges, from mental health struggles to conflict with closed-minded family members, while also celebrating the power of living an authentic life. Schools banned and challenged the book for LGBTQ content, and because, once again, it was considered sexually explicit, musing on why parents are so afraid of Beyond Magenta. Cookland told CBS, it's scary to people because they don't understand it. Once they get to understand it, it's no longer frightening. But there's a period before it happens where there's so much pushback and so much fear. And I think that's what's happening with my book. Okay. See, David's talking about Banned Book Week. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay. So what can we do as libraries? If you're part of the library, definitely have a clear policy at your library. Talking with Laurel the little bit that I did this last week, the Brainerd Public Library does have a policy. It is on the website. It's clearly posted there and kind of explains how they go about getting books and bring them in. Be aware of what books are being challenged. And yep, I just wanted to check. So I did actually copy this from the Brainerd Library. This is what they say on it. The selection of any title does not constitute an endorsement of its contents. Some materials are controversial. Decisions to purchase a title are not based on anticipated approval or disapproval, but solely in relation to building the collection serving patrons' interests. The materials and programs provided in education are educational, informational, cultural, and recreational needs. Every effort is made to select a full range of materials representative of all points of view concerning any subject. The right and responsibility to guide the reading, viewing, and listening of children rests with their parents and legal guardians. Selection of material for adults will not be inhibited by the possibility that the material will come into the possession of children. So that's our local library. And then what can we do as friends of the library? So what can we do to support our library, especially in times of heavy hitters? Be aware of that policy. I would say definitely take time, if you can, with the library staff and your library director, and maybe have conversations about what they're seeing. And talking to Laurel, Brainerd really hasn't had anything at this point of people coming in and challenging any of the books or asking for them to be removed from the shelves. So nothing as of this time. I was in there yesterday for our board meeting. I grabbed some of the titles that are most being challenged yesterday, and found out that a lot of these books I couldn't even get because they are off the shelf. So they are being checked out. Definitely talk about banned and challenge books in our circles, with your friends, with other people. It's actually, I enjoy talking about it. I think it's a fun topic, especially when you go with some of those older titles and kind of lead into that with letting people know the books that have been challenged through the years are just kind of like, wait, what? Just make it a positive experience. I think in any situation, the more we talk about things, the less we take away that power. Participate in Banned Book Week. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It's a great way to highlight incredible, important books and create community awareness. The public library is the greatest equalizer. This is just a fantastic quote, and I think it speaks volumes in the world we live in today. So I had just a few questions here. Just real quick, I'm going to just flip through these quickly because I know we got some fun giveaways, and I got some of your questions to answer really quick. So just as a just for you, I thought these were just kind of fun to think about. And like I said earlier, I'm going to go through this quickly because I was so worried about not talking too fast. So I'm gonna go through these quickly. The webinar link is going to remain on the Minnesota Association of Library Friends website. So you'll be able to find that if you want to go back and kind of review this with other people, or definitely think about these questions a bit more. So this one, which banned book character would you like to have lunch with? So some things to think about. And who in your life has most influenced your love of books and your right to read? And you think about, for myself, I did not come from a family of readers. My mom and dad were not readers. My sister was not a reader. I don't even know where that came from, but I just fell in love with books and my local school library. Which banned book would you memorize to prevent being lost to the sands of time? I think we gave a nice wide variety today of books on all subjects. If you could go back in time, which book would you give your younger self? And I'm bringing this in one more time because this was on an earlier slide, but I just think it's so important. If we ban what offends someone, we won't have anything left in the curriculum because everyone will inevitably be offended by something. So picture your library or picture your schools without the books. It would just become so controversial that we just can't have anything on the shelves because somebody is offended by it. Where does it stop? And as David said on the chat, coming up, my voice, the good old sinuses, coming up, Banned Book Week is in September 18th through 24. If you are friends groups, if you're with libraries, absolutely connect and do something cool with us. Some of the things that we've done, and that's a question coming up, is at our local library, we've got a little window right inside where it's kind of like a display area that's locked with glass. In the past, we're putting banned books in there with little fun, quotes on what makes them banned to really just kind of in a fun way educate people. Definitely lots of things you can do through our board. We talked about, having books like you wrap them like the Valentine's books and just kind of like telling the story on the outside and let people check them out that way. Just lots of things you can do. And just even doing this has really kind of energized my passion for banned books again, which makes me start thinking ahead to like, what can we do to educate our community more and maybe make like a fun trivia night or something like that in your community to help just make people aware. Like I said, the more people are aware, the less power you give it. So when you think about banned books, don't think about those doing the banning. Think too about the readers, about the people these books could save, people who feel alone and silenced. Think about the people who aren't marginalized or lonely, who can learn to empathize through these words, becoming allies and supporters. Then think about going to your local library and checking out one of these or any number of other banned books, because as I hope this makes us realize, you never know which book will be the next to change or save a life. So some of you sent in some questions, and I'm just going to answer those. And then if we have any time, I guess David will let me know. I may have just talked our way through it. But here's some questions that were sent in by you, those of you who are viewing with us today. And then after this, we're going to do the giveaways. So does your friends group or other that you know of observe Banned Book Week? Is that helpful, or does it give extra air to a contentious issue that doesn't need it? And so I think I kind of answered this. We do, I wish we did more. We kind of, just because one of our big events is Wine and Words, and typically it hits that mid-August, third week of August, right in there. And we are so tired by the time we're done with that event. We haven't really done as much as I think we could have, especially, you know, in more recent years. This year, Wine and Words, not plugging my event, but plugging the event, is July 27th, 28th, and 29th. So we've actually got a little breather in there, which makes me kind of think I have time to kind of gear up and think more of things that we could do here for sure. Another question: community groups have become so organized in how they object to books and which titles to target. I've heard there are national think tanks that are feeding them a playbook for how to effectively lobby for removal of a book. Is this true? And are there also playbooks for people like Friends of the Library who want to challenge the challenges? I absolutely love this question, and I wish I have the answer. So to the first part, I don't have any proof, but I'm going to believe that is true. In the way the world is functioning now, I'm absolutely sure people get together and plan their attack. I absolutely love the second part of this question too. How do we counter challenge that attack? And I think that's something that I'm going to think about long after this webinar is over, because I think that is something that really does need to exist. And I hope that maybe through the Minnesota Association of Library Friends and the board members on there, as well as maybe it's another conversation of what we can do to kind of create that playbook. I'm giving you a few things here today, but I know there's so much more we could definitely do. What role do friends groups play in supporting libraries when books are challenged? I talked about that a little bit, is just, I think, being aware of what those challenges are. And I think really I always refer to the friends as being kind of the icing on the library. Like the library is the cake, but we are those little extras. I think that's our role, is just seeing what can we do to be supportive and find out those conversations. And I think that is a really great start. And then just being aware and sharing with people why these books are important. What can we do as volunteers and community members and volunteers do to support the frontline staff who unfairly bear the brunt of critiques in these politically charged times? I think it almost just, the question kind of speaks for itself, is do whatever we can to be supportive of them and just find out what their needs are. Just for ourselves, our Friends Board met yesterday, and we did actually have a conversation with our library staff and asked, you know, what could we do to be more supportive at this time, just with shortage of volunteers in different areas. And then with Laurel being sick, we always want to be supportive there as well. But I think just let them know that we can be sounding box. We can be people we can bounce off. We are not only friends of the library, or if it's community members here in this webinar, we are all part of our local library. And anything that just being knowledgeable is helpful. How are new additions to a library's collection chosen in the first place? Is there transparency about this process? And might that lack of public awareness be contributing to misconceptions about biases in library materials? Another great question. Kind of looking around on our library website today, it does list, I read that one little section about what they do with books that are getting this kind of attention. But it also goes on to kind of explain how they are just trying to be really diverse and obviously listening to what books are people asking for. I don't know if this is all libraries, but like for our library, when I walked in yesterday and asked about a book, they did not have it, but they were happy to order it. And I love that. And I think that's part of it, is kind of what we discussed today, is you're seeing that different books speak to different people, and some people need these books, and when they're struggling with life choices and things, some of these books honestly could be lifesavers. And it's important to be able to have these books that help people and get them in their hands. Have there been any high profile book banning challenges in Minnesota yet, as there have been in Montana, Wyoming, and elsewhere? So, and this might be something that maybe the other Minnesota Association of Library Friends staff knows. I don't know of anything as of super recent. What I did find when reviewing this question is that in 2018, these two books were kind of were being banned from schools from being part of the curriculum in 2018. Again, kind of stuff we already discussed, the racial slurs, the use of the N-word, and yeah, but that's what I could find on that. So I think that is it for my presentation. I know David's going to take over and do some giveaways. I'm going to check really quick and see if there's any questions I miss. Thank you, Judy.
That was lovely, Sheila. Thank you.
It was wordy.
Well, I would say you also had more than your fair share of illustrations, which punctuated the point very, very nicely. There's so much to chew over here, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's thinking that. I'm just the first to get the privilege of saying it. So let's see, cognizant of time, what I'm going to recommend, Sheila, is have you reread those titles one at a time, and I'll spin the wheel here. Nothing terribly fancy, let alone proprietary, wheelofnames.com. But if you pre-registered and did not opt out of this exercise, your name is reflected here. And we'll see how it lands. Note, of course, that if you have the book, you can always give it to your friends for their book sale. All right, was our first ban this book?
It was Judy Bloom.
Judy Bloom, thank you.
Yep. Are you there? Got it's me, Margaret.
All right, isn't that fun? And if you registered, of course, we have your email already, so we will circle back to you individually about your preferred mailing address. Lois, she just went twice. And what was our next one, Sheila?
Sorry, David, I thought you had the list, so I'm gonna have to look.
Oh, that's okay. I do. I just don't trust it.
Do you? I'm
John
sorry.
Green?
What? Yep, I thought you had
I say
it,
it's
so.
John Green.
Yep, I think you're right. Yep.
Oh, congratulations to Colleen.
Fun wheel, by the way, Dave. You're gonna have to show me how you did this.
Yeah, absolutely will. Next on my list.
The other John Green.
Right,
The,
Alaska.
Yep.
Is on my to read pile, by the way. Let's even by a hair.
Hmm.
And next we have classic Ray Bradbury. Congratulations, Marcy. Next is Angie Thomas, The Hate You Give. Congratulations, Wilma. And thank you for being here. Let's see. Next, I have the Jesse Andrews title. What was that again, Sheila? That was the 3-part title about the dying girl. I think dying girl.
Oh, yes. Yeah, me and Earl and the dying girl.
That's it. Thank you.
Yep.
Congratulations, Gail. We'll email you, of course. Next is Toni Morrison. Congratulations, Noel. Okay, and now ban this book.
Yep.
You can bring it home. Sheila, by my count, that was the last one. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Wonderful. Cognizant of time, and because you did such a wonderful job answering all those questions submitted in advance, what I think we'll do next is pass it back to Loretta for our closing notes.
Okay, it was fantastic, and I love all the chat remarks that, you know, about the great presentation. So thank you so much, Sheila. That was wonderful. And thanks to each of you for joining us for Living in Challenging Times Book Banning Then and Now. Please watch your inboxes for a follow-up email from MALF. In it, you'll find a PDF of today's slide deck, a link to the recording, and a brief survey. And we appreciate if you would take a minute with the survey. We're eager to hear what your thoughts on today's webinar, and just as critical, what you'd like to see next from MALF's programming. Before we log off, I do want to leave you with 2 reminders, followed by 2 exciting pieces of news that you'll be the first to hear publicly. For those, first, the reminders: Friday, July 1st marks the entry deadline for the 2022 Evie Nordley Award. It's a perfect chance to share with fellow friends what you've been up to for the past year and to potentially win up to $1,000. Any friend supported a project is eligible for consideration, provided that the project implementation began after January 1st, 2021, and either the friends or the library was the primary beneficiary. Some of the common project types include special events, successful fundraisers, membership drives, and advocacy campaigns. But, you know, the sky's the limit, so we'd love to hear from you. And next, note that MALF's mission cutoff for the 2022 class of Stand Up for Stand Up Friends falls 3 weeks later, Friday, June, is it June 22nd? Or is that supposed to be July 22nd, David?
July.
July 22nd, right. Perks of this inclusive honor include a prize package and matted certificate from MALF, inclusion in a special video tribute, and shout out by this fall's Saturday Splash author MC. Visit our website, mmlibraryfriends.org, for details on both awards. And that brings us to our 2 announcements. If you follow MALF's website and blog with any regularity, you'll notice some big changes this summer. We're in the midst of a major overhaul to our web presence, all to further our goal of servicing you and your service to your libraries. New features prioritized after feedback from our member base include a Friends database, crowdsourced Friends event calendar for the state of Minnesota, and a comprehensive video archive. We're also actively updating the web resources available to you at mnlibraryfriends.org. Watch for a soft launch later this summer. And last, turning again to Saturday Splash, I'm thrilled to announce this year's MC and keynote speaker is Minnesota's own Kate DeCamillo. That probably needs no introduction. Kate is a 2-time Newbery Award winner of beloved children's books and the pen behind modern classics like Because of Winn-Dixie, The Tale of Despereaux, and Flora and Ulysses. And she's also a lifelong fan and advocate of our nation's libraries. She's going to share her passion for libraries and give us a scoop on her latest book, The Beatrice Prophecy, which I've read, and it's fantastic. The morning of Saturday, September 24th, she'll also MC our presentation of both the 2022 Evie Nordley finalists and Stand Up Friends honorees. Attending our fully virtual Saturday Splash is free, and registration will go live later this summer. Be sure to subscribe to our biweekly e-blast for further news on both Saturday Splash and the new MALF website. The sign-up link is on the next slide. and will be provided again as part of your wrap-up email. And thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your week.